Wirtz, and today I'll be bringing the world news to you. A political standoff that has spanned 5 decades and 10 presidents began to crumble on Wednesday with President Barack Obama's move to normalize relations with Cuba. Tensions between the U.S. and Cuba began to rise when Fidel Castro and the Communist Party of Cuba took over the country in 1961. The tensions further increased with the Bay of Pigs invasion of 1961 and 2, and even more so tightened during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The U.S. then placed a trade and travel embargo on Cuba and ended all diplomatic efforts in Cuba. The announcement of the new policies regarding Cuba was the product of a year of clandestine back-channeling between the U.S. and Cuba, facultated by the Canadians and the Vatican, with personal involvement from the Pope. President Obama said in his speech on the matter that today America chooses to cut loose the shackles of the past so as to reach for a better future for the Cuban people, for the American people, for our entire hemisphere and the world. He went on to say that it's time for a new approach, and neither the American nor Cuban people are well served by a rigid policy that's rooted in events that took place before most of us were born. Now let's listen in on the President's speech to find out more on this.
In our policy in more than 50 years, we will end an outdated approach that for decades has failed to advance our interests, and instead we will begin to normalize relations between our two countries.
Cut.
Furthermore, Obama has set his plan in motion by instructing Secretary of State John Kerry to immediately begin discussions with Cuba to reestablish diplomatic relations, and that the U.S. will reopen an embassy in Havana. The administration will also allow some travel and trade that has been banned under a decades-long embargo instated during the Kennedy administration. In an effort to boost the Cuban private sector, the President will also allow expanded commercial sales and export of goods and services to Cuba, particularly building materials for entrepreneurs and private residents, and allow greater business training as well as permanent greater communications, hardware, and services to go to the island. This has a global impact because it is important for other countries to follow the example of the U.S. and Cuba, because it shows that if two countries can get along that have had tensions in the past, it can help boost their economies and restore diplomatic action in each other's country. Now to Drawn with national news.
Hi, my name is John Erie. I'm going to talk about Alzheimer's disease because I recently found that Alzheimer's disease affects 5 million Americans and it's 6th leading cause of death in the United States. It's a disease that causes problems with a person's ability to think and perform simple daily tasks. It starts off slow but gets worse over time. A person with this disease usually dies 10 years after being diagnosed. But the latest studies show that they have a cure for the disease. A study at UCLA Science is offering a glimmer of hope for this hopeless disease. The program uses simple vitamin D levels in blood, DHA supplements to build broken connections in the brain. Its strategy is fasting to normalize insulin levels, which help reverse the decline in their memories and thinking abilities. The patient in the study memories improve or return to normal. Now to Austin with local news.
Thank you, Drawn. On Monday, December 15th, at Dollar General, a robbery occurred. The suspect ran to Dollar General and then violently pointed a gun and demanded money. He then got the money and then fled in a silver car. This story is important because it is important that we always be prepared for whatever could happen. And now to Nick with good news.
Thank you, Austin. Interns at NASA's Johnson Space Center created a takeoff from the popular song to inspire interesting sonic for Orion's first flight. All About That Space features pathways interns providing a dance tour of NASA and the Johnson Space Center after rewriting through the lyrics of All About That Bass. NASA's Orion spacecraft is built to take humans farther than they've ever done before. Orion will serve as an exploration vehicle that will carry the crew to space, providing emergency abort compatibility, sustain the crew during the space travel, and provide safe re-entry from deep space. Return velocities, says the introduction on the video for YouTube. And that is all that we have for you on TCSN. We will see you next year.
Because you know I'm all about that space travel. I'm all about that space travel. I'm all about that space travel. I'm all about that space.